Your daughter, Chloe, is in our intensive care unit. The doctor's voice on the other end of the phone was calm, professional, and it shattered my world into a million pieces. I had called my daughter's number expecting to hear her laugh. But instead, I was told she was fighting for her life with stage 4 cancer. And as I raced to the hospital, only one question burned in my mind. Where the hell was her husband? This is a story about a line that should never be crossed. Subscribe if you believe that when family is threatened, you do whatever it takes. It all started with a phone call. A week before I got on the plane, Ethan's voice was slick with that particular kind of patience that isn't patient at all. It's the tone someone uses when they're waiting for you to finish talking so they can dismiss whatever you just said. I was on the back porch of my home in Texas, looking out over the yard I'd spent 30 years taming. And he was telling me about stock options and portfolios. It's just a lot of money to be moving around. Ethan, I said, trying to keep my voice even. The fund I set up for Chloe was meant to be a safety net, for a house down payment, for the kids' college, not for whatever this is. He sighed, a little puff of condescending air through the phone. Dewey, with all due respect, the market in L.A. is a different beast. You have to be aggressive. It's not like fixing a deck. This is how real wealth is built. Just trust me. I'm making sure Chloe and the kids are set for life. Just trust me. The 3 most expensive words in the English language. I didn't push it. He was my daughter's husband, the father of my grandchildren, Leo and Mia. You pick your battles. But as I hung up, a cold knot formed in my stomach. It was the same feeling I got when a contractor tried to sell me cheap lumber at a premium price. The feeling of being played for a fool. That feeling followed me all the way to California. A few hours later, I was standing in the chaotic river of people flowing through LAX. The air smelled of jet fuel and overpriced coffee. In my hand, I carried a box, carefully wrapped. It was a rocking horse I'd carved for my grandson Leo's 4th birthday, made of solid oak, sanded so smooth, it felt like water-worn stone. It was a surprise visit. I'd pictured the look on their faces, Chloe's warm hug, the kids screaming grandpa as they tackled me at the door. That picture is what kept me going. The drive to their neighborhood was a tour of the California dream. Manicured lawns, Teslas humming in every driveway, palm trees standing like silent soldiers against a perfect blue sky. Their house was a beautiful 2-story place in a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of place that cost more than I'd made in my first 20 years of work, the kind of place that was supposed to be a fortress of happiness. But the silence was the first thing that hit me. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that settles in a place that's been forgotten. I stood on the porch, the rocking horse in my hand, and stared at a garden full of dead plants. The rose bushes were brittle, brown skeletons. The lawn was patchy and yellowed, like the hide of a sick animal. My gaze drifted to the mailbox. It was crammed full, an artery clogged with junk mail, and what looked like bills with angry red lettering on the envelopes. A small package was propped against the door, faded by the sun. It had been there a while. My gut, the one that had kept me safe on construction sites my whole life, was screaming. I wasn't just too early for a surprise party. I was far too late for something else entirely. I walked the perimeter of the house. In the backyard, the pool cover was half submerged in greenish water. A bright pink flamingo floaty lay upside down near the edge, coated in dust and cobwebs. I cupped my hands against the glass of the sliding door and peered into the living room. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight. A few of Leo's toys were scattered on the rug, as if he'd just gotten up and walked away mid-game. Everything was still, preserved under a thin gray film. A modern-day tomb. "Can I help you?" The voice startled me. I turned to see a woman in her late 60s, holding a small watering can, her face a mixture of suspicion and concern. She was standing by the low fence that separated the properties. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said, trying for a friendly smile. "I'm Chloe's father, Dewey. Just flew in from Texas to surprise them for my grandson's birthday." Her expression softened immediately. "Oh, the father. Of course, I'm Clara Gable." She wiped her hand on her apron and gestured vaguely at the house. "Well, I'm afraid your surprise might have to wait. I haven't seen a soul over there in weeks." The cold knot in my stomach tightened. Weeks. What about Ethan? Her husband? Mrs. Gable frowned, thinking. "I see him, coming and going. He got a new car. A flashy little silver thing. Sometimes he gets home late. I hear the music. But Chloe, I haven't seen her out in the garden for a month. Maybe more. And the children, it's been so quiet." She leaned in a little closer, lowering her voice. "He told me a while back that Chloe and the kids went to visit her family out of state for a bit. I just assumed he meant you." My blood ran cold. He was using me as his alibi. I thanked her, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. My mind was a frantic mess, a Rolodex of horrible possibilities. I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling so badly I had to try twice to unlock it. I scrolled to Chloe's name and hit the call button, pressing the phone to my ear. It rang once, twice, a third time. Then, a click. But it wasn't her voice. "St. Jude's Medical Center. This is Dr. Evans speaking." The world tilted on its axis. A hospital? Why a hospital? My voice was a dry croak. I'm trying to reach my daughter, Chloe Miller." There was a pause on the other end. The sound of a keyboard clicking softly. "Are you an immediate family member?" "Sire. I'm her father," I said, the words catching in my throat. The doctor's tone was professional, devoid of emotion, which somehow made it 1,000 times worse. "Mr. Miller, your daughter was admitted here 2 weeks ago. She's in our intensive care unit. We've been trying to reach her husband, listed as her emergency contact, but his phone goes straight to voicemail." I had to lean against the hot metal of my rental car to keep my legs from buckling. The sounds of the quiet suburban street, a distant lawnmower, birds chirping, faded into a dull roar in my ears. The doctor kept talking, his words like stones hitting me one by one. "Ovarian cancer. Stage 4. It had metastasized. She was fighting," he said. "She was a strong woman." It all sounded like nonsense. The next hour was a blur of frantic driving and the sterile, antiseptic smell of the hospital. I found her room in the ICU, a place where machines beeped in a steady, relentless rhythm that was meant to be reassuring, but just sounded like a countdown. And then I saw her. My Chloe, my beautiful, vibrant daughter, was a pale, fragile ghost of herself. She was so thin. Her cheekbones, sharp angles under translucent skin. Her beautiful blonde hair was gone, replaced by a soft, thin fuzz, An IV line snaked into the back of her hand. She was asleep, her breathing shallow. I pulled a chair to her bedside and just sat there. My heart, a shattered wreck in my chest. When she finally opened her eyes, they were cloudy at first. Then they focused on me. A tiny, weak smile touched her lips. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my girl," I whispered, taking her hand. It felt as frail as a bird's wing. We talked for a bit. She told me she didn't want me to worry. She apologized for not calling. And then I asked the question that had been burning a hole in my soul since I left her house. "Honey, where's Ethan?" She looked away, her eyes fixed on the blank wall opposite her bed. He's on a business trip. A huge deal. He had to go." "Dad, for us, for the future." The lie was so thin, so brittle. I could see right through it, but I saw the shame in her eyes, the desperate need to believe it herself. So I just nodded. I didn't push. Later that evening, while she was sleeping, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. A notification lit up the screen. I picked it up, telling myself I was just going to turn it on silent. My thumb hovered over the screen. This was wrong, a violation of her privacy. But the image of that dead garden, of Mrs. Gable's worried face, of my daughter's hollowed-out eyes, it pushed me forward. I unlocked it. Her thumbprint was still registered on my phone from a family plan years ago. The notification was from Instagram. I opened the app, and my world, already broken, was ground into dust. It was his account, Ethan's, public for the whole world to see. The latest post was from 2 hours ago. It was a video. Ethan, tanned and laughing, on the deck of a magnificent yacht. He was surrounded by people, mostly young women in bikinis. He raised a bottle of champagne to the camera, the sunlight glinting off the green glass. The caption read, "Sealing the deal. Work hard. Play harder." The location tag was pinned, Marina del Rey. Less than an hour's drive from where his wife was wasting away. I scrolled, my thumb moving mechanically. Photo after photo. 5-star dinners in Beverly Hills. Cocktails at rooftop bars. A shopping spree on Rodeo Drive. Bags from brands I couldn't even pronounce. And then I saw it. A picture of him leaning against a sports car, grinning. On his wrist, catching the light, was a watch. A Rolex. The air left my lungs. I had given him that watch. A wedding gift. I remember standing with him just before the ceremony, clapping him on the shoulder. Time is the most valuable thing a man has. I told him, spend it wisely, on the people who matter. He had spent it. He had taken the money I'd given them for a safety net, for my daughter's life. And he had spent it on this circus. The steady, rhythmic beeping of Chloe's heart. Monitor filled the silent room. A stark contrast to the thumping bass of the party, music still faintly playing from the phone in my hand. The warmth of a father's love drained out of me, replaced by something cold, hard, and terrifyingly clear. I sat in the plastic chair in Chloe's room, the phone heavy in my hand. Its screen dark. The warmth of a father's love had been scoured out of me, replaced by a glacier of pure, cold rage. I didn't move for a long time. The only sounds were the soft sigh of the ventilator and the steady, electronic pulse of the heart monitor, each beep a testament to the life my daughter was clinging to. Is a life her husband was actively auctioning off for champagne and sunshine. Eventually, Anursaka a kind woman with tired eyes. She checked Chloe's vitals, adjusted her blankets, and gave me a sympathetic look. You should get some rest. See ya. The waiting room down the hall has some couches that are slightly more forgiving than those chairs. I just nodded, unable to form words. When she left, I leaned forward and kissed Chloe's forehead. Her skin was cool and dry. I'll be right back. Honey, I whispered. I promise. I didn't go to the waiting room. I went to the deserted family lounge at the far end of the ICU. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, I sat down at a small table, took out my phone, and went back to Ethan's Instagram profile. My fury was no longer a hot, blinding thing. It had cooled, hardened, sharpened into a tool. My hands were steady now. I started at the top of his feed and began to work methodically. Every picture, every video. I screenshotted it. The yacht party. The dinners where the bill was likely more than a nurse's weekly salary. The designer clothes. The geotags placing him in Beverly Hills. Santa Monica. Marina del Rey everywhere, except at his dying wife's side. I saved each image to a new folder on my phone, which I titled simply Evidence. Then I went a step further. I started recording my screen and rewatched his video stories, capturing his laughing face, the carefree sound of his voice boasting about his life, the clinking of glasses in the background. Each click of my phone was a nail I was hammering into his coffin. The night crawled by. I drank burnt, bitter coffee from a vending machine that tasted like my soul felt. I watched other families come and go, their faces etched with worry and grief. I was one of them, but I was also separate. Their battles were against disease, against fate. My battle was against a monster who wore a human face. As the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the grimy windows of the lounge, I pulled out my laptop. There was one more piece of the puzzle I needed to see. I logged into the private banking portal for the trust I'd established for Chloe. It was a substantial account, built from decades of my sweat and discipline, intended to be a foundation for her family's security. The transaction history loaded onto the screen. It was a bloodbath. It wasn't just the amounts, which were staggering. It was the names: Spago Beverly Hills, $850. The Marina Club membership, dues $5. Ling Ling Ling, Versace, $7. Lambe, a down payment on a lease for a Porsche Taycan, $15. Ling Ling Ling, on and on it went. A litany of his greed. He hadn't just been stealing from the account, he'd been gutting it. Living like a king on the money that was supposed to pay for the chemotherapy that might save his wife's life. I opened a spreadsheet and began to document every single withdrawal. Every charge that wasn't for a mortgage payment or a utility bill. I cross-referenced the dates with his Instagram posts. The $7, $200 charge at Versace matched the day he posted a photo wearing a garish new shirt. The Porsche down payment was the same week he posted a video of himself speeding down the Pacific Coast Highway. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He was arrogant. He believed he was untouchable. The sun was fully up when I closed the laptop. I had a detailed ledger of his betrayal, a timeline of his depravity. I knew what I had to do. I went back to Chloe's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. I poured her a small cup of water and helped her take a sip. Her eyes, clear and lucid, found mine. "You were gone all night," she said, her voice raspy. "Just down the hall." I lied gently. Didn't want to wake you. I sat with her, letting the silence stretch for a moment before I spoke again, keeping my voice soft, casual. Honey, I don't want you worrying about a thing, but I was thinking, are you all set with the hospital billing? Is there a payment plan set up? She shifted uncomfortably. Ethan's handling all that, she said, the programmed response coming automatically. He said the insurance is complicated. He's taking care of it. I'm sure he is, I said, my voice betraying nothing. It's just, these places can be aggressive. I want to make sure you're not getting any stressful calls. No calls, she said quickly. A little too quickly. Ethan gave them his number. He's the point of contact for everything. It was the final confirmation I needed. He had isolated her, not just physically, but financially and logistically, making himself the sole gatekeeper of her life while he systematically dismantled it. I looked at my daughter, at her fierce, misplaced loyalty, and I felt a surge of protective instinct so powerful it almost knocked the wind out of me. My decision was no longer a choice. It was a duty. I looked out the hospital window at the sprawling city of Los Angeles waking up below. When Chloe's mother was dying, I made her a promise. I promised I would always protect our daughter. For years, I thought that meant protecting her financially, ensuring she never had to struggle the way we did. I was wrong. Protection wasn't about giving her a safety net. It was about shielding her from the monsters, especially the ones she couldn't see. And right now, a monster was using my money and my daughter's love as his personal playground. The time for passive protection was over. It was time to go to war. I stepped out into the hallway and made a call to an old friend, a developer I'd worked with in Orange County years ago. Jack, I said, getting straight to the point. It's Dewey. I'm in L.A., and I need a name. I don't need a good family law attorney. I need a shark. The kind of lawyer who makes other lawyers cry. An hour later, I was on the phone with a woman named Julianne Davenport. Her voice was calm, clipped, and radiated an intelligence that could cut steel. I didn't waste time with emotion. I laid out the facts with the cold precision of a man reading a damage report. The stage 4 cancer, the abandoned wife, the empty house, the Instagram account, the bank statements, which I had already emailed to her. She was silent for a long moment after I finished. I could hear her clicking through the files I'd sent. Mr. Miller, she finally said, and there was a new, sharp edge to her voice. This isn't just grounds for divorce. This is financial abuse. Fraudulente Missrepräsentation. An intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is a slaughter. What he's doing is morally reprehensible, and parts of it are criminally prosecutable. A wave of validation washed over me. I wasn't just an angry father. I was on the right side of the law. What do? I asked. First, she said, her voice, now a commander's. You turn off the money. Not a dime. Not for gas. Not for a cup of coffee. You starve him. He's a parasite. And you are the host. We cut him off from his life source. Second, you continue to document everything. Every text. Every email. Every call. Let him dig his own grave. He has no idea you're watching. And third, you do not engage with him without my guidance. When he realizes the money is gone, he will become desperate. And desperate men are predictable. The path forward was clear. My rage now had a blueprint. My next call was to Frank, my personal banker for over 15 years. He was a good man who had helped me navigate everything from my first small business loan to setting up Chloe's trust. Frank, it's Dewey. I have a situation here. It's an emergency. I explained everything, my voice low and urgent. I didn't have to elaborate. Frank was a father too. I could hear the shift in his breathing, from professional concern to personal anger. My God. Dewey. He breathed. That's monstrous. I need you to initiate what I'm calling Operation Firewall. I said, I want every point of access Ethan Miller has to any of my accounts, or any account affiliated with my daughter. Sealed. Cancel his supplementary cards. Revoke his online access. Change every password and security question. I want him locked out so completely that if he tried to look up the balance, the system would laugh at him. Can you do that for me? Frank, right now. Consider it done, Frank said, his voice grim. The vault is being sealed as we speak. Dewey, not even a ghost will get through. A profound sense of relief settled over me as I hung up the phone. The first domino had fallen. I had taken back control. I walked back into Chloe's room and found her sleeping peacefully. The lines of stress on her face seemed to have eased just a little. I pulled the chair back to her bedside, took her hand in mine, and sat there, watching her breathe. I felt a strange calm. My plan was in motion. All I had to do now was wait. An animal like Ethan, so used to a constant supply of fuel for his ego and his lifestyle, wouldn't last long once the supply was cut. It wasn't a matter of if he would call, it was only a matter of when. The afternoon bled into the evening. A doctor came and went. Nurses changed shifts. I didn't leave her side. I just sat there, a silent sentinel, waiting for the inevitable. It happened just after 7 p.m. My phone, which had been resting face down on my lap, began to vibrate. The persistent, angry buzzing felt like a prelude to battle. I picked it up and turned it over. There on the screen, illuminated in the dim light of the hospital room, was the name Ethan. I took a slow, deep breath, letting it out just as slowly. I muted the ringer so it wouldn't wake Chloe. The vibration continued against my palm. A desperate, frantic signal from a world of chaos I was about to confront. I let it vibrate for another 10 seconds. A small, petty act of control. Then, I swiped my thumb across the screen. Hello, I said, my voice perfectly calm. For a second, there was only the sound of his breathing and a faint, thumping bass line in the background. Then, his voice, slick and sharp with irritation, cut through the line. Dewey, what the hell is going on? I shifted slightly in the hard plastic chair, my gaze fixed on Chloe's peaceful, sleeping face. I was playing a role now. The concerned, slightly confused father-in-law. Ethan, it's good to hear from you. Son, everything. Okay, you sound a little stressed. Still on that business trip. The word son dripped with a poison only I could taste. The effect on him was immediate. I could almost hear his teeth grinding together through the phone. Don't play dumb with me, he snapped. The accounts, my cards, they're not working. I'm in the middle of a very important dinner with investors, and my card was declined. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? A very important dinner. I glanced at the time. It was past 7 in the evening, The investors were likely the same bikini-clad women from his Instagram feed. I injected a note of concern into my voice. Declined. That's terrible. It must be some kind of system error with the bank. These things happen. But a dinner, you say. That's great news. Are you closing that big deal you told Chloe about? I was laying the trap, carefully, brick by brick. I needed him to lie. I needed him to walk into the cage of his own accord before I slammed the door shut. He took the bait, his voice regaining some of its usual arrogant swagger as he shifted from anger to self-importance. The biggest deal of my career. Dewey, he said. The background noise, swelling for a moment as someone laughed loudly near him. We're celebrating on their yacht. These are serious people. I can't look like I can't pay for a round of drinks. You need to call the bank. Right now, tell them to fix whatever glitch is happening. There it was. The yacht. The lie. Bold and effortless. He was so confident in his deception, so certain of my ignorance. The cold fury inside me coalesced into a point of absolute clarity. It was time. A yacht. Huh? I said. And the manufactured warmth in my voice vanished, replaced by the flat, cold tone of polished steel. That sounds familiar. Is it by any chance the same yacht from your Instagram stories? Ethan, the one currently docked in Marina del Rey. Silence. It was the most profound silence I had ever heard. The thumping music in the background seemed to fade away. The boisterous laughter died. I could picture him perfectly, his smug smile frozen on his face, the color draining from his cheeks as his brain struggled to compute what he had just heard. I could hear a faint sea breeze, the gentle lapping of water against a hull. He must have walked away from his investors. What did you just say? He stammered, his voice a fraction of what it was before. I said, I've seen your Instagram, I repeated, enunciating each word with slow, deliberate precision. I've seen it all. The parties, the $500 bottles of champagne, the girls who are half your age. I've seen you living your best life. Ethan, all while my daughter, your wife, is lying in an intensive care unit, fighting for every single breath she takes. A strangled noise came from his end of the line. It was the sound of a cornered rat. You're an L. Brah. How do you... Chloe didn't have to tell me anything. I cut him off. She's been too busy trying to survive. Too busy covering for you. Telling me her husband was away closing a big deal for your family's future. The only future you've been building is your own. The panic in his voice was now laced with the acrid stench of desperation. Okay. Look. Dewey. It's not what it looks like. This is networking. You have to spend money to make money in this town, I was going to tell her. I just didn't want to worry her while she was sick. Worry her. The words came out as a low growl. You left her alone for weeks. The garden is dead. The house is empty. Her neighbors thought she'd left the state. The hospital couldn't even reach you. Her own husband, her emergency contact. You didn't want to worry her. I checked my messages, he yelled, his voice cracking. I've been busy. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The pressure, I almost laughed. Oh, harsh, ugly sound. Let me tell you about pressure. Ethan, pressure is watching your child hooked up to machines that are keeping her alive. Pressure is hearing a doctor use the words stage 4 and metastasized in the same sentence. That's pressure. What you're feeling right now isn't pressure. It's the consequences of your own actions. Finally catching up to you. He was breathing heavily now, the smooth facade completely shattered. The threats came next, just as my lawyer predicted they would. It was the last move of a man who had lost the game. "You can't do this." "Dewey," he snarled. A pathetic attempt at intimidation. "That's our money. It's Chloe's money, too. If you cut me off, I swear to God, I will divorce her. I'll take everything, and I'll get the kids. You think a judge is going to give 2 kids to a sick woman? I'll tell them she's unstable. I'll paint you as a meddling old fool. You will never see your grandchildren again. Do you hear me?" This was his trump card, his ultimate weapon, the one thing in the world he thought could bring me to my knees. He was wrong. He had no idea what I'd spent the last 24 hours preparing for. "Are you planning to tell the judge all that while wearing the Rolex I gave you?" The question threw him off balance. What does your stupid watch have to do with anything?" "Everything," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. I could feel the promise I'd made to Chloe's mother, years ago on her deathbed. Hardening my resolve, I gave you that watch as a symbol of time and responsibility, a reminder of the man you were supposed to be for my daughter. Instead, you used that time to betray her. You pawned your responsibility for a good time. That watch is a testament to your failure as a husband and as a man. I let that sink in for a moment before delivering the final, crushing blow. "And as for custody," I continued, the words from my lawyer echoing in my mind. "My attorney seems to think that a judge will be very interested in seeing bank statements that prove a father was siphoning his dying wife's medical fund to lease a Porsche and party on a yacht. She has a name for that. Ethan. It's called felony fraud. She also seems to think that abandoning your critically ill spouse and then attempting to use your children as leverage for financial gain will not play well in family court. In fact, she's confident that by the time she's done with you, you won't be able to get supervised visitation in a locked room." The other end of the line was utterly silent now, not even the sound of his breathing. I had taken away his money, his lies, and now, his last and most vicious threat. I had left him with nothing. He was a king who had just discovered his entire kingdom was made of sand, and the tide had just come in. His voice, when it finally came, was a broken, unrecognizable thing, a pathetic whimper. "Dewey, please, don't do this. I'm sorry. I messed up. I'll come to the hospital right now. I'll fix it. I'll fix everything." It was too late. So much too late. The damage was done. The trust was incinerated. "No, Ethan," I said, and my voice was devoid of all emotion. It was the voice of a judge passing sentence. "You won't be coming to the hospital. You won't be calling here again. You made your choice when you stepped on that yacht instead of sitting in this chair. You chose the party over the pain. You chose yourself over your wife. Enjoy your choice." I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't want to hear him beg. I didn't want to hear him curse me. I just wanted him to be gone. I pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red icon to end the call. The silence that filled the room in its wake was a heavy, blessed thing. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the endless grid of city lights below. Each light was a life, a story, for the first time in days. I felt like my daughter's story had a chance to continue. My hands were perfectly steady now. I opened my phone's contact list, found his name, and pressed "Block this caller." A confirmation popped up. I pressed "Block contact." Then I deleted his number entirely. It was a small, symbolic act, but it felt like cleansing a wound. It felt like an ending and a beginning. I turned back to the bed. Chloe's eyes were open. She was watching me. A question in their tired depths. She must have woken up during the call. I didn't know how much she had heard, but I saw the fear and the confusion swirling within her. I walked back to her bedside and sat down, taking her fragile hand in both of mine. I squeezed it gently, trying to pour all the strength, all the love, all the fierce, unwavering protection I felt for her through my touch. She looked at me, her voice, a fragile whisper. "Dad, what was that? Who was that?" I looked into the eyes of my child, my only daughter, and I gave her the only answer that mattered. That was just me, taking out the trash. "Honey," I said softly, "everything is going to be okay now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." She looked at me, her eyes wide and searching in the dim light of the hospital room, trying to make sense of the fragments of conversation she'd heard. The fear and confusion were plain to see, but underneath it, I saw a flicker of something else, a desperate hope that what she thought she heard wasn't true. "Dad, what was that? Who was that?" she whispered, her voice fragile. I looked into the eyes of my child, my only daughter, and I gave her the only answer that mattered. That was just me, taking out the trash. "Honey," I said softly, "everything is going to be okay now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Tears welled in her eyes and spilled down her temples, disappearing into her thin hair. They weren't tears of sadness. Not entirely. They were tears of exhaustion, of a burden she didn't even know she was carrying, suddenly becoming too heavy to bear. I sat with her, holding her hand, until her breathing evened out and she drifted back into a restless sleep. The next morning, I knew I couldn't protect her from the truth any longer. To heal, she had to know what she was healing from. I waited until after the doctor had made his rounds. After a nurse had helped her with a small breakfast she barely touched, I pulled the chair close to her bed and took out her phone. "Chloe," I began, my voice gentle, "I need to show you something, and I need you to know that none of this is your fault. Do you understand me? None of it." She nodded weakly, her eyes wary. I didn't tutorialize. I didn't lecture. I just opened the Instagram app and handed her the phone. I watched her face as she scrolled. I saw her brow furrow in confusion, then her eyes widen in disbelief. I saw her breath catch in her throat as she tapped on a video, and the faint, tinny sound of party music filled the quiet room. I saw her finger trace the geotag Marina del Rey. She looked at the date on the post, then looked at the calendar on the hospital wall, her mind making the horrible connection. When she was done with the photos, I took out my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I had made, the one detailing the bank statements. I didn't force her to look. I just left it open on the table beside her. "The money from the trust," I said quietly. "It was supposed to be for you. For the kids. For this." I gestured around the hospital room. "He spent it on that." I nodded toward the phone. She didn't cry at first. A strange, hollow look came over her face. It was the look of someone seeing the last 5 years of their life reframed as a lie. The man she loved, the father of her children, the life she thought she was building at all, crumbled in the harsh light of those receipts and photographs. She scrolled back to a picture of him on the yacht, smiling, holding a bottle of champagne. She stared at it for a long time. Then, a single, choked sob escaped her lips, and then another, soon, Her thin shoulders were shaking with the force of her grief. It was a storm of shame, of heartbreak, of feeling so profoundly foolish and betrayed. I didn't say a word. I just wrapped my arms around her as she wept, letting her finally release all the poison she'd been forced to hold inside. I held her until the storm passed, leaving behind a fragile, aching calm. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red and swollen, but they were clearer than I had seen them in years. The fog of his deception had lifted. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now," I said, taking the phone and laptop and closing them for good. "You get better. That's your only job. I'll handle the rest." And I did. The fallout from Ethan was swift and brutal, handled with the clinical efficiency of my lawyer. Julianne. He tried to fight. Of course. He called me from burner numbers, leaving rambling, pathetic messages that swung between begging and threatening. He sent pleading emails to Chloe, which I intercepted and forwarded to Julianne. He even had his own lawyer send a blustering letter demanding the immediate reinstatement of his access to the marital funds. Julianne treated it like a game of whack-a-mole, smacking him down with legal force every time he popped his head up. When he threatened a custody battle, she filed a motion with the court, attaching copies of the bank statements and a sworn affidavit from the hospital staff about his absence. A judge immediately issued a temporary restraining order, forbidding him from coming within 500 feet of Chloe or the children. His downfall was as complete as it was predictable. Without my money, his entire world collapsed. The lease on the Porsche was revoked. His membership at the Yacht Club was terminated for non-payment. His fair-weather friends, the ones who had laughed with him on that boat, vanished the moment he couldn't pick up the check. He was a hollow man, and without the gilded shell, my money provided from their fall, there was nothing left. The divorce was finalized in a matter of months. He received nothing. He was stripped of all parental rights. The last I heard, he was living in a cheap apartment somewhere in the valley, drowning in debt. He was a ghost. A bad memory. He had been erased. But I never took any joy in his destruction. The victory wasn't his ruin. It was Chloe's recovery. With the weight of his lies gone, she began to heal. It was a long, brutal fight. There were days when the chemo ravaged her body, leaving her too weak to speak. There were nights I sat by her bed, listening to her cry from the pain, feeling utterly helpless. But through it all, she fought with a strength I had never seen. The woman who had been too afraid to question her husband was now a warrior battling for her own life, and I was there for every single step, holding her hand, telling her stories about when she was a little girl, reminding her of the fierce, wonderful person she was beneath the illness. Slowly, miraculously, the light began to return. First a flicker, then a steady glow. The treatments started to work. The tumors began to shrink. The color returned to her cheeks. One day, I came into the room to find her sitting up, laughing with Leo and Mia, who I had brought to the hospital for short, careful visits. Seeing them together, a real family, was like watching the sun rise after a long, dark night. A year after I first landed at LAX, the world was a different place. We were back in Texas. I'd sold my old house and bought a property with a few acres of land just outside of town, with a main house for me and a beautiful guest house for Chloe and the kids. The air was clean. The sky was wide, and the only sounds were the wind in the oak trees and the laughter of my grandchildren. I was sitting on the back porch, Watching them, Chloe, her hair now a stylish, silvery blonde pixie cut, was on her hands and knees in a large, tilled patch of earth, showing Leo how to plant a tomato seedling. Mia was chasing a butterfly through the tall grass. Chloe looked up at me and smiled. A genuine, radiant smile that reached all the way to her eyes. She was in remission. She was healthy. She was home. Later that afternoon, she brought me a glass of iced tea and sat down in the rocking chair beside me. We watched the kids for a while, a comfortable silence settling between us. It's so different from the garden in L.A., she said quietly, her gaze on the rich, dark soil. I looked at the neat rows of green shoots, the promise of a future harvest. I thought of the withered rose bushes and the yellowed, neglected lawn I had first seen a lifetime ago. Weeds only grow when no one is tending the garden. Honey, I said. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Dad, for everything, for being the gardener. I never once said, I told you so. I never brought up my initial misgivings about Ethan. She had paid a high enough price for her mistake. Punishing her for it would have been a cruelty beyond measure. The important thing wasn't who was right or wrong. The important thing was that we were here, together, on this porch, breathing in the warm Texas air. The important thing was that she had survived. We had survived. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Leo and Mia ran up to the porch, their faces flushed and happy. Leo proudly showed me the dirt under his fingernails. Mia threw her arms around Chloe's neck. I leaned back in my chair and took it all in, the smell of freshly turned earth, the sound of my daughter's laughter, the weight of my granddaughter's head on her shoulder. The storm had passed. We had found our way back to the light. And in our new garden, under the vast Texas sky, we were finally planting the seeds of a life that was truly our own.